They thought the puppy was dead, left him at a campout like trash. But when a stray cat found him, everything changed. What she did next defied nature, logic, and every cruel thing humans had done. This is the story of an unlikely bond, quiet redemption, and a miracle no one saw coming. Before you scroll away, my heart honestly sank when I saw that 98% of people watch my videos but don't subscribe. If this video made you feel even a little something, please consider subscribing. It might be just one click for you, but it means the world to me. The night had grown thick with fog by the time the group packed up their gear and left the campsite. Laughter still echoed faintly through the forest, carried on the wind like a ghost that didn't know it was supposed to disappear. They hadn't noticed the silence that came after the barking stopped. Or maybe they had. Maybe that's why they left so quickly. Beneath the splintered remains of a makeshift kennel made of twigs and twine, something small and broken lay still in the dirt. A shape barely visible in the dim light of the dying fire. Mud smeared its fur, dried blood crusted its hind leg, and its eyes, half-lidded and dull, were fixed on nothing. A puppy. Tiny. Lifeless, or so it seemed. High above, in the tangled branches of a crooked pine, two amber eyes blinked. The stray cat had watched them for hours, crouched like a shadow. To the campers, she was invisible, just another wild thing in the forest. But she saw everything, heard the shouting, the way the boy kicked the small creature when it wouldn't sit, saw the girl cry and look away as the man grabbed the puppy too hard by the scruff, saw them laugh when it whimpered. And then, finally, the silence. When the last car rumbled off and the forest settled into itself again, the cat descended slowly. Her name was Willow, though no one had ever called her that. She'd named herself in a way. Slender, quiet, patient. She moved like wind slipping through reeds. No collar, no home, just instincts and memory. She approached the limp body with caution. The scent of blood was sharp and sour. The puppy was still warm, but barely. Its breaths came shallow and irregular, a painful flutter like wings broken mid-flight. Willow circled it once, then sat beside it. She didn't meow. She didn't try to wake it. She simply stayed. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The forest buzzed with its usual night chorus, crickets, frogs, owls, but here in this tiny clearing, time hung motionless. Then the puppy moved. Barely. A twitch. A gasp. A whimper. Willow's ears perked. She moved closer, nose brushing the puppy's muzzle. Another twitch. More breath. Weak, but there. She didn't hesitate. With surprising strength for such a small feline, she began to nudge him gently with her head. Once. Twice. Then again. He groaned softly, shifting. One eye cracked open. There was life yet. Willow lay down next to him, her body curled around his. She licked the blood from his fur, slow and rhythmic, as if cleaning her own young. The warmth of her body offered what the humans had taken. Comfort, protection. She'd done this before. Not for dogs, but for kittens long lost. Some eaten by hawks, some taken by the cold. Her heart had hardened since then, but tonight, something in her cracked open again. Morning came slowly, the sky bleeding pale orange through the branches. The puppy stirred. He tried to lift his head, then cried out, a high, sharp sound of pain. Willow stood and nudged his side again, gently coaxing him to rise. He tried, failed, tried again. She waited. Finally, with legs trembling, the pup stood. Willow walked a few steps, then looked back. The puppy took one step, then collapsed. But he didn't stay down. With a tiny grunt, he pushed himself up again. Willow led the way into the woods. They moved slowly. Very slowly, It took them an hour to cover what should have taken minutes. Willow paused often, allowing the pup to rest. He was limping badly. One back leg refused to bear weight. But he followed her. At a small stream, Willow stopped. The water was clear and cool, bubbling over smooth stones. She dipped her head and drank, then stepped aside. The puppy hesitated, then limped forward and drank too, his whole body trembling with the effort. When he collapsed again, Willow lay beside him. She let him rest, grooming him in silence, cleaning his ears, his paws, his wound. Days passed this way. They didn't have names, not for each other. But the pup began to respond to her presence like a child clinging to a lifeline. He slept against her. He limped after her. And she, though she was not his kind, became something close to mother. Each day he grew stronger. The bruises faded. The cuts scabbed. His limp remained, but he learned to move with it, to adapt. It wasn't much, their world, just trees, silence, and survival. But the bond between them deepened. One afternoon, as they were curled together beneath a sun-drenched patch of moss, the puppy did something new. He barked, not a loud bark, not one of fear or warning, but a soft, tentative sound. Almost a question. Willow lifted her head and blinked at him. He barked again, tail thumping once. It was the first time she'd seen his tail move. She stood and stretched, then brushed her side against his. He nuzzled her chest, then plopped back down with a sigh. And for the first time since that awful night, something close to peace settled between them. But peace never stays long in the wild. That night, as the moon rose high, something moved through the trees. Fast, sharp-smelling, hungry. Willow's ears went flat, the puppy slept. She rose silently, her muscles tight with instinct. Something was coming, and this time it wasn't the wind. Willow's body stiffened. Every muscle in her frame seemed wired to the ground, ears twitching, nose testing the air. The scent was thick now, pungent, sour, and full of teeth. Coyote. She had smelled them before, seen their shapes moving across the ridgeline in the distance, but they'd never come this close. Not to her place. The puppy, curled against her side, let out a quiet yawn and shifted. He hadn't sensed it yet. His trust was deep, and his body still fragile. His world had shrunk to the gentle rhythm of their days. Willow's grooming, her warmth, her silent watch. But the wild didn't allow such comfort for long. Willow stood slowly and scanned the trees. The rustling grew louder. Deliberate, confident, not a wandering raccoon or a foraging deer. This was a predator. She nuzzled the pup sharply. He whined, confused, his ears flicking back. A snap, sharp and close, she hissed. That got his attention. The pup, still weak and dragging one leg, struggled upright, stumbling to her side. She circled him quickly, placing herself between him and the sound. Another snap, closer now, then a flash of gray fur. The coyote stepped into view, lean and hungry-eyed. Its ribs jutted like blades beneath its coat, and its yellow eyes fixed immediately on the smallest thing in the clearing. The puppy. Willow stood tall, her tail fluffed out, ears pinned, body low. A sound rumbled in her throat, not quite a growl, but something primal and old. The coyote took a cautious step forward, nose twitching, assessing. To it, this was easy prey. But Willow did not move. Behind her, the puppy whimpered and tried to shrink back, but Willow stayed firm, unblinking. The coyote barked, a sharp, mocking cough of a sound, and lunged. Willow leapt. She wasn't big, she wasn't strong, but she was fast and she was furious. She landed claws first on the coyote's snout, raking hard before leaping away. The coyote yelped in shock, stumbling back. It hadn't expected resistance, least of all from a cat. But it wasn't finished. It came again. Willow dodged, her body a blur. She was buying time. She darted in and out, striking where she could, leading it away from the puppy. The pup cried out. The coyote shifted its attention again. Willow saw it in the flash of its eyes and moved fast. Too fast. It caught her with a swipe of its paw, knocking her aside. She hit the ground hard, air whooshing from her lungs. The coyote turned toward the puppy. And that's when the puppy did something unthinkable. He stood his ground. He barked. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fierce. But it was defiant. The coyote slowed, confused. It expected whimpering, retreat. But this half-broken creature stood tall, barely, but tall enough to bark again. Then Willow was up, bleeding from the flank, but standing. She let out a sound the coyote didn't expect, a scream, raw and wild, the sound of a mother who would not surrender. And something shifted. The coyote hesitated. Another movement in the woods. Another shape. A second coyote? No. Larger. Human. A boy, maybe 16, stepped through the underbrush, his flashlight flicking wildly. He froze when he saw the coyote, then shouted. He waved his arms, threw a rock. The beam of light caught the animal's eyes, and with a snarl, it turned and vanished into the dark. Silence returned. Willow collapsed beside the puppy. The boy approached slowly, crouching, his eyes wide. What the? He saw the blood, the limping pup, the cat standing over him like a guardian. Hey there, he said softly. You guys okay? The puppy wagged his tail once, weakly. The boy blinked. You're the one they said died. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a water bottle, unscrewing the cap. He held it out. The puppy sniffed it, then drank greedily. Willow stayed back, watching, ready to bolt. But the boy was gentle. He reached into his pack again and pulled out a protein bar. I don't have dog food, but maybe you can manage this. He broke it into pieces. The puppy ate slowly, painfully, but he ate. The boy looked at Willow. And you? What kind of cat are you? She didn't move. You saved him, he whispered. Didn't you? She blinked. He sat beside them, not too close, just near enough to be part of the moment. The puppy curled into the boy's side, already dozing off. Willow stayed beside him. The boy looked into the trees, then back down. I'm Jack, he said softly. I was in that group. I didn't know they'd leave him. I should have said something. I didn't. I'm sorry. The forest was quiet. I came back to bury him, Jack whispered. But he's alive, because of you. Willow closed her eyes. Didn't try to pet her. He just waited. The puppy let out a soft sigh. Morning came. Willow stood. She looked at Jack, then at the puppy. Then she turned toward the trees. Jack reached out. Wait, you're not staying? She hesitated. But no, this world wasn't hers. She belonged to the quiet, to the wild, to no one. She looked back once, then she disappeared into the woods. Jack picked up the puppy carefully, holding him close. You're coming with me, he said. We'll get you fixed up, and I'll make it right. The puppy nuzzled into his chest. Far off in the distance, a single cat's cry echoed through the trees, soft, proud, and gone. Jack held the puppy close as he stepped out of the woods, his flashlight barely cutting through the thick morning mist. The trail back to the road was harder now with the added weight, but he didn't mind. The puppy was light, bones and skin, and clung to his hoodie like it was the only safe thing in the world. Jack's truck was parked a half-mile away, tucked off the shoulder of a gravel road. He unlocked it with shaking fingers, then set the pup carefully on the passenger seat. The little thing whimpered at the cold vinyl, but didn't protest. His eyelids were heavy, his energy almost gone. Jack rummaged through the glove compartment for the blanket he kept for emergencies. It was old and thin, but warm. He wrapped the puppy gently. "Hang in there, buddy. Just a little longer." He started the engine and pulled out onto the road, heading toward town. The vet's office was barely open when Jack arrived, banging on the glass with one hand while the other cradled the puppy to his chest. A groggy receptionist finally buzzed him in. "You need help?" she asked, startled by the sight of Jack's dirt-streaked face and the limp bundle in his arms. "Yeah, please, he's not dead, but he's close." Dr. Hammond, the on-call vet, emerged moments later. She took one look and ushered Jack into an exam room. "Put him down here." Jack laid the puppy on the metal table, and the vet sprang into action, checking vitals, hooking up fluids, testing his limbs gently. "How long has he been like this?" Jack hesitated. I'm not sure. He was left out there, in the woods. I thought he was dead. But a cat..." He stopped, realizing how insane it sounded. There was a cat. She took care of him. Dr. Hammond blinked. "A cat?" Jack nodded. "Protected him. Fought off a coyote." The vet paused, then resumed her work without commenting. "He's in rough shape, malnourished, dehydrated. That leg might be a fracture, but he's fighting. That's something." Jack pulled a chair close and sat down. He didn't move. Not even when the vet offered him coffee. "I'll wait." Hours passed. Jack stayed. The puppy was stabilized. His breathing evened out. The fluids helped. They wrapped his leg in a soft splint and monitored his vitals. Dr. Hammond returned around noon with some good news. "He's going to make it. It'll be a tough recovery, but he'll live." Jack didn't respond at first. He was staring at the pup, hand resting lightly on the edge of the blanket. Then, quietly, "I want to keep him." The vet smiled. "Well, he'll need someone steady." Jack nodded. "That'll be me." Over the next week, Jack didn't leave the puppy's side. He named him Shadow, in honor of the cat who had saved him. It felt right, like the memory of that mysterious feline should never be forgotten. He even went back to the woods once, stood at the edge where they had first met her. "She saved him," he whispered. "I owe her everything." He left a small tin of tuna on a rock, just in case she was watching. Shadow gained strength quickly. Within 2 weeks, he could stand without wobbling. He followed Jack around the house, sleeping in a basket beside his bed at night, whining whenever Jack left the room. He had bonded completely, like a child to a parent. Jack was surprised by how much it meant to him, how deeply he felt this little life tangled up in his own. They went on short walks together. People in the neighborhood started to notice how Jack, the quiet teen who never spoke much, now smiled when he walked. How he talked to the pup like an old friend. Word spread. And then came the call. Mrs. Calloway, the leader of the campout group. "Jack, I heard about the puppy. Is it true? He's alive?" Jack's voice was calm but cold. "Yeah, he's alive." She paused. Wow. We were told he didn't make it. You left him to die. That's not fair." "You all walked away," Jack said. "You didn't even look back." There was silence on the line. Then a quiet, "Can I see him?" "No," Jack said simply. "You don't get to now." That night, as Shadow napped beside him, Jack wrote a letter. Not to send, just to get it out. To the ones who left him, you gave up on him. You assumed his little life didn't matter. But someone didn't. A stray cat with no name, no home, and no reason to care. She stood up. She protected him. You should be ashamed. But I'm thankful. Because from your cruelty, something beautiful was born. A bond, a second chance. He has a name now. He has love. And he'll never be left behind again. Jack folded the note and placed it in a drawer. He looked down at Shadow, sleeping peacefully, tiny tail twitching. And then he glanced out the window towards the tree line. There, just for a second, two glowing eyes blinked back at him before disappearing into the dark. He smiled. She was still watching. The summer deepened. Long golden evenings bathed Havenwood in a sleepy glow, and the bond between Jack and Shadow grew stronger with each passing day. Shadow, now visibly healthier, ran with a quiet limp, but never let it slow him down. He was curious, brave, and clung to Jack like he'd never let go. They had created a rhythm. Mornings were spent on walks by the stream near the edge of town. Afternoons were quiet, Shadow dozing while Jack worked odd carpentry jobs for neighbors. Nights, though, belonged to memories. And to her. The cat. Every evening, Jack left out a plate near the fence line, tuna or chicken or sometimes just a folded blanket if he had nothing else. And some nights, when he looked quickly enough, he swore he saw her, perched silently under the elm, watching. She never came close again, not like that first time in the forest, but her presence never left. She was always somewhere just out of reach, like a ghost tethered to their story. Shadow felt it too. Every time Jack paused and looked toward the trees, Shadow would glance up, ears perked, tail still, as if remembering, as if missing her too. One particular evening, while clouds smeared pink across the sky, Jack took Shadow on a different walk, through the old trail near the campgrounds. The place had changed. The burned-out fire pit was cold, overgrown with wild grasses. Empty soda cans rusted beneath a log. Jack walked slowly, remembering the terror of that night, the panic, the guilt, the way Shadow had looked, still cold, abandoned. He crouched beside the spot where he had first seen them, cat curled around the broken pup, and placed a small wooden carving on the ground. It was a rough carving, done in pine. A cat curled. The details were simple, but the meaning was deep. "For you," he whispered, almost to the wind. Shadow sniffed it, then sat beside him, head tilted as if he too understood. The next morning the carving was gone. No footprints, no drag marks, just the disturbed leaves and a faint imprint where it had rested. Jack smiled to himself. Not everything needed to be seen to be real. Days passed, then weeks. Shadow had his final vet checkup and got a clean bill of health. "He's still a little underweight," Dr. Hammond said, scratching behind his ears. "But he's strong. And that limp? He's adapted. I doubt he even notices anymore." Jack noticed, though. Not in pity, but in pride. Shadow had survived what most wouldn't, and he did it not just because of luck, but because someone had chosen to fight for him. Someone small, silent, and forgotten by the world. Jack's reputation in Havenwood began to shift. Where once he was the quiet loner with the sad eyes, now he was the boy who rescued the puppy. People waved when he walked by. Strangers asked about Shadow at the market. Even the local newspaper ran a small story. Teen rescues puppy left for dead, a tale of survival and unexpected kindness. They hadn't included the cat. Jack had tried to explain, but the reporter thought it was too far-fetched. Jack didn't mind. Some stories were better kept between hearts that had lived them. One late August night, something unusual happened. Jack was sitting on the porch, reading, when Shadow bolted upright, ears locked forward. He growled, not in fear, but with purpose. Then he ran. Jack followed, heart pounding. Shadow darted through the field behind the house, toward the woods, the same direction where Jack had always left food. But this time, Shadow didn't stop at the edge. He pushed through the undergrowth, tail high, confident. Jack stumbled behind him, branches slapping at his arms. And then he saw them. In a quiet clearing, bathed in moonlight, Shadow stood nose to nose with the stray cat. She was thinner now. Her once sleek fur bore signs of battles, scars across her flank, a torn ear. But her eyes were the same, fierce, golden, steady. She stared at Jack for a long time, then returned her gaze to Shadow, nudging him softly with her nose. Jack stayed still, hardly daring to breathe. Shadow licked her cheek. It was only for a moment, but it cracked something deep open in Jack. He felt his chest ache, tears welling up, and all he could do was kneel and whisper, "Thank you." The cat stepped back. Her gaze flicked to Jack, acknowledging him, not needing more. Then she turned and vanished into the dark. This time Shadow didn't follow. He walked slowly back to Jack's side, nuzzled his hand, and together they left the woods. Later that night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the breeze rustle the trees, thinking about survival. About how sometimes it wasn't brute strength or numbers that saved a life, but compassion. Unlikely, quiet compassion from those with nothing to gain. He looked at Shadow, now curled at the foot of the bed, dreaming. "Wherever she is," he murmured, "I hope she knows she changed everything." And somehow he believed she did. The seasons had changed once more. The sharp green of summer gave way to the muted amber of autumn. Leaves carpeted the ground, and the wind held a different tone, one of endings and quiet memory. Jack stood outside the cabin one crisp morning, a mug of tea in his hands, watching the woods where so much had changed. He was no longer the man who avoided connections, and Shadow, well, Shadow was no longer just a rescued pup. He was something more. The pup had grown into a quiet but sturdy dog. His leg still held a slight tremor when he ran, but it no longer slowed him down. He had a calm about him that Jack often envied, an unshakable stillness, like he had made peace with the pain he had once carried. But there was one thing Jack had noticed. Every so often, Shadow would sit by the cabin window at dusk and stare out toward the forest, unmoving, his ears tilted forward like he was listening for someone. Waiting. It was the cat. She had disappeared after that night near the campout. The night she'd done the unthinkable. Jack never saw her again, but her presence never truly left. Sometimes Jack found paw prints in the mud near the tree line. Once, there was a mouse left neatly on the back step. An offering, perhaps, or a memory. Shadow always seemed to know. On those nights he would sleep near the door, alert but calm, as if guarding something unseen. Then came the day Jack found the crate. He had gone hiking along the south ridge, helping a ranger clear out a few fallen logs after a storm. Tucked beneath a half-burned stump, barely sheltered, was a small wooden crate. Inside, bundled together for warmth, were 4 tiny kittens, no more than a week old. They were cold and silent, their mother nowhere in sight. Jack's stomach clenched. The scene was too familiar, too much like that first night when Shadow had been left to die. But these weren't discarded by accident. The crate had been lined with dry grass. The kittens were clean. One even had a strip of cloth tied loosely around its belly like a makeshift bandage. Whoever had left them had cared enough to try, but hadn't stayed. Jack didn't hesitate. He gathered them carefully and hurried home, cradling the box to his chest like a secret too fragile to expose to the world. Shadow met him at the door, tail stiff, eyes wide. He sniffed the crate and froze. Then, slowly, gently, he nudged one of the kittens with his nose. It squeaked in response. Shadow lowered himself, curling around the box like he had once been protected, and was now the protector. Jack named them Ember, Finch, Cricket, and Dusty. Ember was the boldest, a black and white furball with a streak down her nose, so eerily like the stray cat that it made Jack's chest tighten. Over the next weeks, Shadow took on the role of guardian, even sleeping near their crate, growling if anything came too close. It was as if he knew their story too well. One cold morning, Jack stepped onto the porch and found something waiting. A small wooden figure, carved and smooth, resting on the steps. It was the shape of a cat curled around a pup, just like the one Jack had whittled and left months ago at the edge of the woods. But now, there were new additions. 4 tiny kitten figures tucked beside the cat. It hadn't been weathered by time. It was fresh. Someone had brought it here recently. Jack stood frozen. He looked toward the trees. Nothing moved, but something in the stillness whispered. She had come. One last time. Not to stay, but to leave behind a legacy. He didn't chase the thought. He didn't call out. Some things, he had learned, were too sacred to disturb. As the months passed, the kittens grew, learned to chase moths, climb furniture, and wrestle with Shadow's tail. Ember, especially, never strayed far from him. She would sleep pressed against his side, purring like a distant drumbeat. She was fierce and graceful and carried in her something wild, something inherited. Jack built a small shelter next to the cabin, converting it into a rescue haven. Locals started calling, asking if he'd take in lost or injured animals. The man who once avoided companionship had become a caretaker. His story, Shadow's story, spread quietly, told in whispers and passed down in town like a fable with truth behind it. Visitors would often point to the wooden carving on Jack's desk and ask, "What's the story behind that?" Jack would smile. "A stray cat once saved a dying pup. She didn't stay, but what she left behind changed everything." That was all he ever said. Shadow lived on, strong and loved. The limp remained, but it no longer mattered. He had purpose, he had family. Ember remained by his side, never wandering far from the dog who had once needed saving and now offered safety in return. And Jack? He had found peace not in answers but in acceptance. Not everything had to be understood. Some things, like the quiet love of a stray cat, were meant only to be felt, remembered. At night, when the fire crackled low and the world was quiet, Jack would sit with Shadow and Ember curled at his feet. Sometimes he thought he saw a flash of silver in the woods, a silhouette, a tail flick, a ghost, perhaps, or maybe just a memory that refused to fade. Either way, he'd smile, because the cat hadn't just saved a life. She had saved all of them.